In December 1975, a Kodak laboratory prototype captured a photograph without using film. Engineer Steven Sasson and a small team had assembled the machine from available parts, including a new CCD image sensor. It weighed about 8 pounds. Capturing a black and white image took roughly 23 seconds. The data was stored on a digital cassette, and viewing the picture required separate playback equipment connected to a television. This was not a secret modern camera ready for store shelves. It was an experiment proving that light could become digital information, be stored, and reconstructed as an image. That distinction matters because the popular version of the story is too neat. Kodak did not simply possess a finished digital camera and place it in a drawer. The 1975 prototype was bulky, slow and extremely low resolution. Years of improvements in sensors, memory, processors, screens and manufacturing were still necessary. Kodak also continued to work on digital imaging, but Sasson's machine made the direction visible. Photography could eventually separate from film, chemical processing and paper. An image could become data. That possibility threatened the business systems built around selling film, developing it and printing photographs, even as it created an enormous new market. The tragedy is not that one prototype was ignored. It is that understanding a future and reorganizing a successful company around that future are completely different challenges. Digital photography arrived gradually, then everywhere. Compact cameras, professional systems, and finally phones. The 8-pound box did not kill film or save Kodak. It did something more historically precise. It demonstrated, in 1975, the basic chain that now creates billions of images every day: sensor, data, storage, display. The first portable digital camera was not a product people could buy. It was a warning from the future that worked. That is the short version of the first portable digital camera story. To understand why it mattered, we need to slow down and examine the entire system around it: the operator, the mechanism, the infrastructure, the economics, the social habits, the transition, the exceptions, and the legacy. Start with the human routine. Sasson's 1975 prototype should be judged as an experiment in the complete digital image chain rather than as a hidden consumer camera. The important comparison is not between human labor and a machine in isolation, but between two complete routines. A product earns a place in daily life when it removes decisions, interruptions, and opportunities for error as well as physical effort. Notice who begins the task, who watches it, who corrects it, and who cleans up afterward. Those quiet obligations often explain adoption better than a specification sheet. A faster mechanism can still feel slow when it repeatedly calls a person back into the process. Now look closely at the mechanism. The CCD converted light into signals. Electronics converted signals into data. A cassette stored that data, and separate equipment reconstructed the picture. A mechanism can appear simple after it becomes familiar, yet its design fixes a chain of choices about timing, force, feedback, and control. Those choices determine what the operator must still notice and what the product can safely decide by itself. The useful question is where judgment lives. It may sit in a lever, a gauge, a physical stop, a warning sound, or the practiced senses of the user. Later designs often look smarter because they move more of that judgment inside the product. The third layer is infrastructure. Each slow and bulky stage exposed a component that later industries would have to shrink, cheapen, and standardize. Objects do not spread on engineering merit alone. They rely on power, communications, roads, plumbing, retail, repair, standards, or trained workers. When that supporting network changes, the same object can move from essential to inconvenient without changing its physical form. Infrastructure is easiest to notice when it is missing. Once it becomes reliable, designers can assume it exists and remove features that once compensated for uncertainty. The next generation then appears simpler only because more complexity has moved out of sight. There is also an economic question. Film photography was not only a camera business, it connected manufacturing, distribution, processing laboratories, paper, chemistry, and retail habits. Buyers compare more than the price on the day of purchase. They also absorb time, maintenance, supplies, training, risk, and the cost of keeping an older system alive. A replacement becomes persuasive when the total burden shifts. Even if the original product still works, that burden is distributed unevenly. The purchaser, operator, repairer, employee, and family member may each experience a different cost. A successful product can therefore win by solving the problem of the person who makes the decision, even when another person performs the work. The social meaning matters too. Digital imaging threatened that profitable chain while initially offering an image that was visibly worse and harder to view. Everyday products signal expectations about speed, cleanliness, status, privacy, responsibility, and skill. People may accept an awkward device when it represents progress, or abandon a capable one when its rituals begin to feel out of step with ordinary life. Advertising can amplify that shift, but it does not create it alone. Friends, workplaces, shops, and public institutions teach people what normal use looks like. Once the new behavior becomes ordinary, the old routine can seem demanding even to someone who once performed it without complaint. Replacement rarely happens in a single moment. The management challenge was therefore not simply believing the prototype but timing investment across two incompatible business systems. Old and new systems overlap while prices fall, habits adjust, and supporting services reorganize. During that interval, decline can look slow. Once the surrounding network tips toward the replacement, however, the remaining market can contract with surprising speed. This is why a date of invention rarely marks a clean beginning, and a date of discontinuation rarely marks a clean end. The useful timeline follows access, affordability, confidence, and repeated use. Those changes can lag behind the laboratory by years or decades. The surviving exceptions are revealing. Sensors, memory, displays, processors, and software improved gradually before mobile phones finally made the camera one feature of a larger device. A product that disappears from the mainstream can remain valuable in places with different constraints. Survival is evidence that design is always conditional. Convenience for one household or business may be fragility, waste, or unnecessary complexity for another. These holdouts are not simply people trapped in the past. They can be rational users optimizing for control, durability, independence, familiarity, or low operating cost. Looking at the exceptions protects the history from becoming a simple story in which every newer product is automatically better. Finally, consider the legacy. The prototype matters because it made the future legible long before the surrounding technology made that future commercially obvious. The most durable inheritance is often not the object itself but the behavior it normalized. Later products can hide the same task behind software, sensors, or a larger network, making yesterday's visible mechanism difficult to recognize inside today's routine. To find that inheritance, follow the promise rather than the shape. Ask what uncertainty the product removed, what action it made repeatable, and what expectation it taught users to carry forward. The casing may vanish while the promise becomes an invisible standard for everything that follows. Taken together, these layers explain why the first portable digital camera was neither a foolish dead end nor an inevitable step toward the present. It was a practical answer to one historical arrangement of labor, technology, cost, and expectation. Its rise shows what people urgently needed at that moment. Its decline shows which surrounding conditions changed. And its legacy survives wherever a newer product quietly performs the same job with fewer visible steps. That is why ordinary relics deserve more than nostalgia. They reveal the hidden systems inside everyday life.